Hey, Jay Carper from American Torah here, and I've got a little bit longer reading today than usual. I'm reading from Proverbs chapter 16, verses 10 through 16. Divination is on the lips of the king. His mouth must not transgress in judgment. Honest weights and scales are Yahweh's. All the weights in the bag are his work. It is an abomination for kings to commit wickedness, for a throne is established by righteousness. Righteous lips are the delight of kings, and they love him who speaks what is right. A messenger, as messengers of death, is the king's wrath, but a wise man will appease it. In the light of the king's face is life, and his favor is like a cloud of the latter rain. How much better to get wisdom than gold, and to get understanding is to be chosen over silver. Let me also read from Deuteronomy chapter 17, verses 14 through 20. When you come to the land which Yahweh your God is giving you, and possess it and dwell in it, and say, I will set a king over me like all the nations that are around me, you shall surely set a king over you, whom Yahweh your God chooses, one from among your brethren you shall set as king over you. You may not set a foreigner over you, who is not your brother. But he shall not multiply horses for himself, nor cause the people to return to Egypt to multiply horses. For Yahweh has said to you, you shall not return that way again. Neither shall he multiply wives for himself, lest his heart turn away, nor shall he greatly multiply silver and gold for himself. And it shall also be, when he sits on the throne of his kingdom, wind's getting away with me here, away from me, when he sits on the throne of his kingdom, that he shall write for himself a copy of this law in a book, from the one before the priests, the Levites, and it shall be with him, and he shall read it all the days of his life, that he may learn to fear Yahweh his God, and be careful to observe all the words of this law and these statutes, that his heart may not be lifted above his brethren, that he may not turn aside from the commandment to the right hand or to the left, and that he may prolong his days in his kingdom, he and his children in the midst of Israel. Justice is defined by God. There is no justice outside of his commandments. If you want to know what is just, what is righteous, and in Scripture, the concepts of justice and righteousness are synonymous. There is no justice outside of righteousness. There is no justice outside of God's commandments. So the king or president or prime minister, whatever the top executive office is in a nation, his job in God's eyes is to promote God's justice. He is supposed to speak for God before the people. He's never supposed to work for personal gain. It's not about him. The divine right of kings, the idea comes kind of from Scripture, but it was abused insanely. The old saying, power corrupts, absolute power corrupts absolutely. The more power you give somebody, the more their evil inclination has reign to do whatever it wants. But God doesn't put rulers in place to rule for their own benefit. Their job is to rule on God's behalf for the benefit of the people. A ruler's job is to reward the good, to promote faith among the people, and to punish wickedness, to discourage injustice. Now, not all of God's commandments require the civil government to step in and punish people, but a king's job is to promote righteousness and discourage wickedness, even when there's no civil punishment for those things. Everyone wants the favor of people in power. Everyone wants whoever's in power to look at them and say, I like that guy. They want to be on his good side. Even if your ruler is an evil, horrible person, everybody wants to be favored by the ruler. So people will tend to behave in the ways that the ruler seems to want. If a ruler indicates to the people that he approves of sexual promiscuity or people living out bizarre fantasies like pretending that they're women when they're actually men, if the leadership seems to approve of those things, the people will do more of them because the people want to be in the favor of the rulers. If the ruler promotes God's standards of behavior, God's justice, the people will tend to behave according to God's standards, because the same reason, they want to be in the favor of the ruling class, of the people in charge. And this is true at every level. If you are a supervisor in an office, if you are a CEO of a big company, or mayor of a city, governor of a state, president of the United States, at every level, if you have authority over other people, you have the power to influence them towards God's standards of behavior. You have the power to increase justice in your people, whoever is within your sway, whether you just have influence over people, like you're an internet marketer. You have influence. People will tend to want to be like you. They will want to be in your favor. So whatever behavior you promote as righteous and justice, people will emulate you. And there's a positive feedback loop between the people and the leaders. A wicked people will generally get the government they deserve. They will get a wicked government. A righteous people will tend to get a righteous government. And then a righteous government will promote righteousness in the people. A wicked government will promote wickedness in the people. So the one reinforces the other. So if you want the president to be a righteous person, then you be a righteous person. You promote righteousness in every area where you have influence. Be the king from Proverbs 16 and Deuteronomy 17. You take these rules and you act like God wrote this for you. You study God's law. You ensure equal weights and measures wherever you have influence. You run your life for the benefit of the people under your authority and not just for your own. And the people around you will gravitate. They'll pull. You will create a gravitational well that pulls other people into those same behaviors if you are consistent and you promote God's ways. So this is Jake Harper from American Torah. Be an influencer for true justice, which is synonymous with God's commandments, and be blessed.